When Tyreek Hill was traded to the Miami Dolphins back in March, in what was maybe the most shocking move of an already wild 2022 NFL offseason, the first question most fans and members of the media asked was, how will Tyreek Hill fit with Tua Tagovailoa? And that is a fair question to bring up. Oftentimes, a QB has a large effect on a wide receiver and vice versa. But I think too many people have forgotten about the effect a coach or a coach's scheme can have on a player's success. So I think the question everyone should be asking is, how will Tyreek Hill transition from Andy Reid's air raid offense to Mike McDaniel's West Coast zone run scheme offense? To answer that, we have to ask ourselves, what do we know about Miami's brand new head coach Mike McDaniel, and what do we know about superstar wide receiver Tyreek Hill? When it comes to McDaniel, purely from a coaching perspective, he is one of the biggest question marks going into the 2022 NFL season. He's been touted as an offensive guru by his coaching peers Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and he's put together an impressive offensive resume during his time in San Francisco. But the Dolphins were the only team who even extended him a head coaching interview. As far as Tyreek Hill, he's a 3-time first-team All-Pro receiver and the type of dynamic weapon that all kinds of offensive coaches drool over. And when asked about ways McDaniel can use Tyreek, he said that there was no real ceiling on how to involve a weapon like Hill in his system. So this inspired me to take a deeper dive into the resumes of Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill to see just how these two will fit. And I've come to the conclusion that the two of them together are an absolutely perfect match.
Was a lot of times during the year that we felt that Tyreek was underutilized.
Yep, that was actually said on Tyreek Hill's recently released podcast, It Needed to Be Said, where he and his agent openly admitted that he was underutilized in Kansas City. I know this didn't sit well with Chiefs fans, and I personally was pretty shocked to hear that Tyreek Hill was not 100% happy in Kansas City. He even went on to say that he had some issues with the offensive game plan most weeks, and felt that Kansas City wasn't utilizing his full skill set. So I wanted to take a deeper dive and see if this wild statement actually made any sense. Because if you take a look at which players led the league in targets this season, Tyreek is on the top of the list. So it's easy to say he's just trying to change the narrative that he only went to Miami for the money. But when I dove a little deeper, I realized that most people were actually taking this the wrong way. I don't think he necessarily meant it was the number of targets, but where on the field he got those targets. He did reference some low target games and complained about that, but he also talked about not liking the overall game plan from week to week. So I think this mostly comes down to the Chiefs not getting him the ball more in the short or intermediate range and letting him do things after the catch. I'll touch on this a bit later in the video, but in 2021, the Chiefs saw a lot of too high safety looks as a counter to the air raid attack. But over the years, Tyreek has improved his skill set more than almost anyone else in the league. And that includes his short route running and just overall versatility. So he expected the Chiefs would adapt his role more to keep his utilization high. And although the Chiefs did give him more opportunities in the short and intermediate game than they have in previous years, it wasn't really proportionate to the amount of too high looks they saw. And more often than not, Tyreek Hill was used as a decoy while other players got involved, which I don't necessarily blame Andy Reid for, considering he also may have the greatest tight end of all time on his team. But at the same time, even when Tyreek was targeted on quicker hitting routes, it seemed like Mahomes had inconsistent accuracy at times and just didn't look comfortable in those situations, which led to one of the worst offensive seasons for the Chiefs since 2018. So it's clear Tyreek wasn't enthralled by his role in Andy Reid's air raid system in 2021, and given Tyreek's comments and his agent Drew Rosenhaus's comments, I think Mike McDaniel's system may be exactly what he's looking for. And I could think of 3 main things that stand out when I think how McDaniel's system can suit Tyreek, and also how Tyreek can elevate McDaniel's system. I have to first start with Tyreek's ability with the football being paired with McDaniel's creativity in the running game. Let me put this as simply as I can. Tyreek Hill is the most dynamic player in the history of the NFL. We have not, and we will not see a player that moves the way he does. And maybe one of the most disrespectful narratives that emerged after Hill was traded to Miami was that he was just a speed guy or just a deep threat. Honestly, there were people in the media acting like Miami just brought in another Mike Wallace. It was insane to see the variety of coverage over the trade, but it actually led me to the realization that Tyreek's talent has not been fully appreciated. There is so much more to his game that we didn't always see when he was limited purely to an air raid system in Kansas City. There have been a ton of aspects of his game that he's done a phenomenal job developing over the years, and I think McDaniel will help unlock the full potential of Tyreek Hill's talent, which sounds a bit ridiculous considering Tyreek is already headed to Canton, but the fact that Tyreek himself even said that he would text his agent every week complaining that he was being underutilized, I think that's a clear sign that there's even more he can show us. But regardless of all that, why would this scrawny, nerdy West Coast first-time head coach who made the Starbucks runs for Kyle Shanahan be the key to unlocking the most dynamic weapon in all of football? Well, I could reference his background as a run game coordinator, who gave the world one of the most impressive rushing performances in NFC Championship history, Or I could reference the major success of his coworkers moving to head coaching positions. But I'm actually just going to focus on what I think is Mike McDaniel's most impressive accomplishment to date, and that is his role in Deebo Samuel's breakout season in 2021. Not only is McDaniel's role in Deebo's development highly impressive, it's also the most relevant, as we can project his effect on Tyreek Hill, considering they play the same position. Now, I know many Dolphins fans that have often joked about every single skill position player becoming the next Deebo Samuel in the Mike McDaniel system, but in this case, I think Tyreek Hill is actually more suited to excel in this system than even Deebo was. So let's take a closer look at Deebo's 2021 season and see exactly how he became a superstar seemingly overnight. Let's start with when it all changed for Deebo, when Mike McDaniel was promoted to offensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers before the 2021 NFL season. Funny enough, McDaniel did interview for the Miami Dolphins' newly opened offensive coordinator position, but he ended up getting promoted internally in San Francisco and took that job. And this turned out to be the best possible move for the careers of both Mike McDaniel and Deebo Samuel. Deebo went on to put up video game numbers. He had over 1,700 yards from scrimmage and 14 touchdowns and showed off abilities nobody thought he had. Deebo was an absolute nightmare in the passing game, but the intrigue of the season has to be how Mike McDaniel utilized Deebo's elusiveness in the running game. Coming from a run game coordinator background, McDaniel was able to turn Deebo into one of the most efficient runners in all of football. And if we glance at Deebo's stats, he never ran the ball like he did in 2021. In his first 2 seasons in the NFL, he only had 22 total rushing attempts combined. In 2021, McDaniel made a conceded effort to get the ball to Deebo by any means possible, rushing included. And as a result, Deebo ran the ball 59 times for 365 yards and averages 6.2 yards per attempt. Even in Deebo's South Carolina days, he was rarely used in the ground game. McDaniel came up with this strategy all on his own. Looking at Tyreek, on the other hand, he has much more experience carrying the ball out of the backfield, and even in his 1 year at Oklahoma State, he actually had more rushing yards than receiving yards. And he was seen more as a gadget-type player when he was drafted by the Chiefs in the 5th round of the 2016 NFL Draft. And the Chiefs used him in all areas of the game, including as a runner out of the backfield. Even though his rushing attempts have dropped since he's become such a valuable receiver, he still is incredibly effective as a pure runner, averaging 9.5 and 10.7 yards per rush in 2020 and 2021 respectively. I expect McDaniel, with his run game coordinator background, to be much more willing to increase Tyreek Hill's rushes this season. And I think Tyreek will be an even more effective runner than Deebo Samuel. The most rushes Tyreek has had in a season is only 24, significantly less than what Deebo had in 2021. So again, if you were confused why one of the league leaders in targets was complaining about his utilization, well, running the ball is another way to get Tyreek involved in the offense, and this honestly could be a virtually untapped addition to Tyreek's game that could not only turn him into the best receiver in football, but one of the best players in the NFL regardless of position. Mike McDaniel might just be the perfect coach to take Tyreek's already Hall of Fame level career to completely new heights. Now, not only will McDaniel help Tyreek Hill maximize his game, I also think Tyreek Hill will maximize Mike McDaniel's scheme. And I can explain this in just a couple simple words. Too high. I know I referenced this earlier, but the Kansas City Chiefs last year, with Tyreek Hill as the main weapon, faced the highest percentage of too high safety looks in NFL history. Now, this is for a couple reasons. Patrick Mahomes' arm talent, Andy Reid's air raid scheme, but maybe most importantly, the freakish speed of Tyreek Hill. Now, I don't expect the Dolphins to get the same amount of too high looks as the Chiefs did, but there will have to be a significant increase in teams running too high shells against Miami simply because they need to respect the speed of Tyreek as well as second-year sensation Jalen Waddle. And let me tell you this, the words too and high paired together is an absolute symphony for any offensive coach that wants to run the football. It means there's a numbers advantage up front, and Mike McDaniel will waste no time in pounding the rock when facing an influx of too high shells. Andy Reid's air raid system and the Chiefs' offensive personnel didn't allow them to appropriately attack the insane amount of too high looks that they were given, and this led to the offense struggling at times last season. Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins, on the other hand, are perfectly built to capitalize on the ground when they have a numbers advantage in the box. And in addition to the run game, a major aspect of McDaniel's offense is crossing routes. Having Tyreek open up the field not only gives the Dolphins an advantage in the running game, but also will help clear space for Jalen Waddle over the middle and Mike Gesicki working the seam. And even Tyreek himself has said he's confident in his ability working over the middle of the field and using his 4.2 speed to run open and get chunks of yardage after the catch. Simply having Tyreek Hill in the field makes any offense easier, and I expect Mike McDaniel's offense to be no different. And that brings us to the final major reason I think Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel are a perfect match, and that is play action. If you type the words Tyreek Hill highlights into YouTube, odds are you'll see more than a few huge plays that came out of play action. And this happened even with the Chiefs having one of the worst rushing attacks in all of football. Having the speed of Tyreek Hill and an offensive coordinator who prioritizes running the ball puts the opposing defense in an extremely difficult position. If defenses prioritize stopping the run, then deep routes will be wide open. If defenses decide it's better to prevent the big play, and McDaniel will be more than happy to pound the rock with newly acquired duo of Raheem Mostert and Chase Edmonds. Considering the reputation of Tua Tagovailoa, I think teams may try to take their chances with a passing game, and if that's the case, the deep crossers and go routes will be wide open. And Tua excelled at hitting these kind of routes at Alabama when he actually had this kind of speed on the field with him. And to his first 2 seasons, the Dolphins just didn't have the offensive weaponry to support his strengths. But now that they do, I truly believe that the additions of the offseason will turn the Dolphins offense from one of the more anemic units in the NFL to one of the most explosive offenses in the league. Is everything going to be perfect right away? Most likely not, as it'll take some time for the new pieces to gel together. But Miami has put themselves into a position where they'll be able to constantly create disadvantages and mismatches against any team they play. So with everyone's eyes on Tua Tagovailoa, my eyes will be glued to McDaniel's play calling and decision making and Tyreek Hill's newfangled utilization, as I truly think this pairing has the potential to shock the entire league and make the Miami Dolphins legitimate Super Bowl contenders.